morning. Oh, good morning, all. Bit of a rocky, bumpy start. But I think we're going to do all right this morning. It's quite a surprisingly nice morning. Bit cold, but still quite nice. But what can you expect? Ooh, there we go. But what can you expect for, this time of the year? Just a couple of clouds in the sky. But other than that, it's quite a nice morning for a walk, really. Like I say, it's a bit cold, but other than that, can't complain. Good morning to you, Hanthorn. Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Ben. And good morning to you all joining us for another good morning walk. What a week it's been. Greetings from Printing Bird. Jay, good morning to you. Have a wave back. But yes, what a week it's been. Udo Frey, good morning to you. Destiny 2 and politics at the same time. You're living the dream. Living the dream. So I had one topic lined up, to be honest, this morning. I don't know if we'll end up talking about it, but we'll see. Yeah, you are right, Jay. It has been a week. It has been an incredibly interesting week. Especially for Johnson. The old adage is that a week is a long time in politics, and I think really the last couple of weeks have probably been the incredibly longest times I think we've had. Well, certainly Johnson should certainly feel it. I read a report yesterday, or not a report, but an article yesterday, talking about how some of Boris Johnson's closest counterparts were all saying that how he feels shattered and demoralised, and he's desperate not to call another Christmas lockdown. And you're like, whoa. Why are you not being desperate to do that? But yeah, anyway. But yeah, interesting times, shall we say, at the mill. Definitely interesting times in Westminster this week. Of course, this all kicks off still, as I predicted it would, with the still continued flowing of the sleaze scandal surrounding Owen Paterson, because if there's one thing that we've learned this week, there's definitely one thing we've learned this week. As a lot of people said, well, probably at PMQs, there was constant talks of how many empty benches there were at PMQs, which is incredibly interesting. And we've talked about this before, about how on the surface, if you looked at it, Johnson looks looks like he's leading some sort of a united party. However, that is further from the truth than people care to admit, and we've seen that very, very recently. In fact, I'd go far as to say and agree with one of the articles we've covered this week, that the Conservative Party is increasingly becoming ungovernable, because there's too many ideologies, different interests going on in that party now. Very true. But we've got to have a serious look about how this sort of affects politics as well, because like I say, this hasn't been Johnson's week. But interestingly enough, I think a lot of the politicians this week have finally got it fed up of Johnson's shtick. Definitely got fed up of Johnson's stick this week. I mean, if you'd followed, so we say, Johnson's exploits this week, he decided to, interestingly enough, which again will not help him with his allies, but again, this is entirely within his character of him, should we say, blaming everyone else but himself. He even threw Jacob Rees-Mogg under the bus this week, which was probably the strangest highlights of the week, because if you were to pick a person that Boris would essentially betray, the last person you would have thought would have been Jacob Rees-Mogg. But and we'll get to that in a bit. But like I say, we'll start at the beginning of the week, because like I say, this is a saga in multi-parts. But of course, this continues from, of course, the Owen Paterson scandal. For those, we'll give a quick intro to those of you not aware, just so you're all, caught up, so you're aware of roughly what's going to happen, of what we're talking about. So, what was it, 2 weeks ago now, Owen Paterson had basically been found guilty by the Parliamentary Standards Committee, basically saying he'd broken the rules on lobbying, that yes, he'd only done it, he'd been a very naughty boy, here's your slap on the wrist, 30 days suspension. And I know, 30 days suspension, quite laughable really. But what happened then was, and this is the important part, because we've now got to really start identifying the Tory groupings in like the Parliamentary Conservative Party, because this gets back to what I was just saying just a moment ago, of just how ungovernable the Tory party is becoming in this case. So it all kicks off essentially with the group calling themselves the Brexit Spartans, which are like the most hardcore of hardcore Brexiteers you can possibly think. And they had essentially decided that Paterson needed saving, that he was a good chap and he should be saved. So these group of MPs, again including Jacob Rees-Mogg, had decided that they were going to save Paterson from this, which of course Boris then announced these rule changes, which again caused a massive outcry. He forced literally all his MPs on a 3-line whip up the hill to vote on this, only for then, after the vote, because again the public outcry about this had been massive, and if there's anything you can identify definitely about this we say particular Tory government, it's that anytime there is a mass outcry, or like a sustained mass outcry, there's probably a U-turn somewhere in the works. And that's essentially what happened. Boris essentially probably pulled one of the biggest U-turns of Tory U-turns he's certainly pulled in a while. Certainly one you could definitely see from space. But essentially he decided he was going to U-turn and that he was going to stick with the Commission standards. But of course, again, as a lot of people have said, this was a plan cooked up by the Brexit Spartan group to essentially get rid of Boris Johnson's true enemy, Catherine Stone, who, by the way, mad props to her. Probably one of like the crazy, elements coming out of this is how much a crusader against corruption this person is. And I think we said it this week as well, that if Boris Johnson really does have a true enemy in the world, it definitely is Catherine Stone. Because she's been described as the Thomas Becket almost of Parliament. Of course, where, shall we say, Henry II succeeded in, shall we say, getting rid of Thomas Becket. Boris's plan to get rid of his turbulent priest failed spectacularly in this case. So this, of course, drags on and drags on and has hurt the Tories in the polls massively. And this brings us round essentially to this week, because there was going to be a vote on, well, a very, very late night vote on whether the Committee of Standards, shall we say, gets to, shall we say, approved what they did. And then along comes a Conservative MP called, I can't remember what his name is, Chris, what's his name now? But he was the one who essentially was like the only Conservative MP who was against like the upskirting bill. Yeah, really bizarre guy, to be honest. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now. Oh, scratching my head, but I can't remember. But essentially, he said no. And of course, in the way that this was being passed, if there was one objection, this had to go, shall we say, to extra time, which is what we got this week. There we go. Because I know you like your ponies. Christopher Cope, that's it, yes. So Christopher decided that he was going to personally try and save this. Who knows why, but essentially this didn't work, which caused the scandal to run on even more, because there now had to be an open debate on Monday, which quite frankly Johnson did not want to have. He very, very clearly did not want to have this debate at all. But the debate was had anyway, one of which he himself essentially didn't turn up to. And this all leads really to last Wednesday, to which, surprisingly, you already knew that Labour was poised to strike. On Monday, they'd already mooted that they were going to put forward a bill to essentially ban MPs from having second jobs unless they were in the public sector, like you were a doctor or something like that. And essentially what happened was Boris tried, and I say tried, to steal key Keir Starmer's thunder. Starmer essentially teed up that they were going to introduce this bill. This was what he was going to do. That Angela Rayner was essentially going to finish it off, because a lot of people probably don't know and realise this, but Angela Rayner, even long before this scandal first came about, has been constantly talking about Tory sleaze, the stuff that they've been up to and what they've been doing. So it would almost be like the perfect 1-2 punch from them. So interestingly enough, this again just go forward, and then Boris, out of nowhere, without even shall we say, talking to his own MPs about it, said, we're going to introduce our own anti-corruption bill. However, we want time to talk about it. We think this should be talked about in the House. And essentially what this may be an attempt at doing was an essentially attempt to try and kick the can down the road towards January. And of course, a lot of the political thinking this week is that Johnson tried to do this so that maybe by then he could maybe get things to calm down. But also, Johnson knows that no matter what his bill puts in, no matter what the bill he puts forward, there's going to be loopholes. And that's one of the things that we talked about this week when we were looking at the proposals put forward by Johnson. It looks like there are massive loopholes in this for essentially MPs to, well, continue what they're doing. So from what we can tell so far, this isn't going to stop, shall we say, MPs having second jobs and, well, jumping more and more upon this gravy train that they appear to be finding themselves on. Because not surprisingly, it is overwhelmingly Tory MPs who are caught up in this second job scandal. Surprising to no one, of course. And the main thing, of course, this week is that this has massively upset the coalition that Johnson has built that got him into power. And as we talked about at the beginning, we talked about how, the Tory party is becoming increasingly ungovernable. Partly because under Theresa May, we saw these groups forming, and it got even worse under Johnson. And normally the Tories are very, very united in what they want. But the problem is, all these groups have different ideologies, different goals. They all want different things. And sooner or later, you're going to have to upset one of them. Like, not all these groups are going to get everything they want, but it appears that that's the mindset that they're going for, that we want everything that we want. And oh my, Johnson definitely has upset the apple cart, because you've got empty Tory backbenchers, which is practically like being an open rebellion almost of many of the Tory MPs signalling their distaste for Johnson. And I think well and truly this week, I think a lot of them have had enough of Johnson. I think a lot of them have had enough of his stick, and I think a lot of them are there just riding this out, thinking, well, so long as Johnson is, so we say, popular with the plebs, we'll continue to support him. And of course, by the looks of it, the sleaze scandal in itself has gotten to the point where even the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, you know, all the very, very Tory supporting, news sheets have all turned against Johnson in quite spectacular fashion and have really dug deep into this. So the tide has really truly turned against Johnson in a way that we haven't seen before, to a point where let's focus on one group to really pinpoint just how annoyed these Tory MPs are against him. So this all comes, and the group we're focusing on, of course, is the Northern Research Group. And the Northern Research Group are essentially the grouping, shall we say, of the Tory MPs who won the red wall seats, of course, at the last election. And since day one, they have been worried that they're going to be one-term MPs, that this was only going to be a one-term thing for them. So this has been a group that has constantly pushing for Johnson to fulfill, you know, his promises. You know, this was the group that was pushing for, we want to know what you mean by levelling up. We want concrete proof. This was the group that forced Boris Johnson to do that levelling up speech, where essentially he said nothing and promised nothing for levelling up. And they have been very, very anxious that when it comes for the time for the next election, they're going to have to go to their constituents and say, well, not only did Boris promise you all this, but I promised you all this as well. Because those Northern Research Group MPs all got in on the promises that Johnson made to the North. So this has really truly been a good old classic Westminster scramble this week. As not only did we see the eastern leg of the HS2 get cancelled, we also saw the Northern Rail powerhouse get completely scrapped as well, if not practically cancelled. In fact, fingers crossed, I've still got to confirm it with it. But I've reached out to, you've probably seen him a lot this week actually on the BBC, a guy called Gareth Dennis, and he is a railway engineer, and he appears a lot on like BBC News and Sky News, very often to talk about railway stuff really. And someone recommended him to me, saying, oh yeah, you've got to watch this guy's channel. And to be honest, I watched it and I thought, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to trains. So I thought, I've got to have this guy on because, to be honest, he's fantastic. So hopefully, fingers crossed, and it is fingers crossed, on Tuesday, we're going to have a special guest on the channel, and we're going to talk about trains. And I particularly, especially, if you know someone who is, there we go, if you know someone who is like anti-HS2, then you need to come or you need to introduce them to this guy, because this guy, when it comes to talking about trains and HS2 and the benefits of it, he knows his stuff, what he's talking about. So I'm very excited, honestly, to have him on and have that conversation with him. So hopefully you can hear me. It's just getting a bit windy. So overall, trains are cool even as an adult as well. So overall, these group of like Northern Research Group MPs they've been absolutely aggressive against Johnson this week, even after obviously cancelling the eastern leg of the HS2, and Johnson announced that there were just going to be these quote-unquote upgrades. Oh, Michael, good morning to you. Good morning from Denmark. So even after Boris announced that there were going to be these upgrades, this didn't stop. This didn't stop the was essentially going to be these Northern Research Groups openly attacking, because that was the interesting thing that happened this week. We had Conservative MPs this week openly attack Johnson, which is the first time it's actually quite happened. To where this has happened. So it's obviously quite interesting to see that happen. And obviously to Paul, there are going to be HS2 trains to Scotland. There are, as like I say, when we get Gareth on hopefully next Tuesday, ask him that question. I will put that question to him. I'll be very happy to put that question to him if you want. Like I say, this guy knows what he's doing when it comes to this, because there is going to be HS2 trains or high-speed rail trains going towards Scotland from Birmingham. It is on the map. It is planned. So. Ooh, there we go. So that was probably one of the big points of this week, the fact that not only had the Tories deserted Boris, maybe in his moment of greatest need, but you had especially the group focusing on the Northern Research Group openly attacking Boris, especially when many of them pretty much owed their seats to Boris, which gives you an interesting option of, might these Northern Research Group MPs from the Tory party, might they be the first ones to, should we say, actively engage in open rebellion? It's a possibility. But we know that Johnson's rulings on the second jobs probably isn't going to pass. And Johnson knows that himself, because there's too many Tory MPs. There's too many Tory MPs that are actively engaged in all the second job, all these second job stuff. So we're just going to have to see again what's going to happen on this. But yeah, like I say, it's been a very, very interesting week for Johnson, and we're going to have to see what happens, because I think, as we've said before twice now, this scandal is just going to rumble on. And I think Johnson's attempt to put his own sort of anti-corruption sleaze bill in angered Tory MPs, because he was called before the 1922 committee, which is again a very influential group of MPs who are essentially responsible in the Conservative Party for holding their Prime Minister accountable. And Johnson even admitted, and I quote, that he had crashed the car in relation to the Paterson scandal. And then, this was the best part, Johnson went on to blame everyone who was involved in that debacle. Again, throwing people like Jacob Rees-Mogg under the bus, which again will not endear him well to any of the people that he threw under the bus during that questioning. And that he was going to, like I say, sort this out himself. He even had the gall to blame Theresa May, saying that she should have solved this sleaze under her watch. Johnson literally went and blamed and cried before essentially the headmaster of the Tory party, that it wasn't his fault, sir, it was those other kids' fault, even though he was pretty much the prime instigator in these things. He could have turned around to again Jacob Rees-Mogg on the Owen Paterson scandal and basically said, no, I'm not going to do it, but he went along with it. So again, there are heavy implications that this is going to take charge and even ownership on. So this is going to be very interesting. This is going to be very, very interesting. Because this is going to have huge ramifications, I think, going forward. I think now you're going to see more and more potentially Tories maybe in openly questioning Boris. Certainly no one on the front bench seems to be, but it seems to be that Boris has essentially built his own backbench rebellion. Oh, Lita, good morning to you. So fully expect there to be even more stuff kick off this week. It's gonna be a fun week. I can say that for you now, because Johnson is now going to be expected to come up with a bill targeting all this lobbying, but at the same time not targeting it so hard that it affects Tory MPs so that they can continue lobbying. Like I said on one of my videos this week, what's the point of being a Tory MP if you can't, make some money out of it? To which I'd always say, an MP's salary is about 80,000 a year. which is pretty good. Let's face it. I mean, I would love to be on, 80,000 a year. I'm currently earning, 13 something an hour, which again is not bad. I can't complain. But to be on, what an MP gets paid, plus their expenses, which I think other people have said probably pushes it really, when you add that all together, probably into about like 100,000 maybe a year. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And to be honest, even if I was living in London, I could live probably quite well on that salary. That is an amazing salary to have. Like I say, it's well above sort of the average salary that we have here in the UK. In fact, I think the average salary in the UK is I think it is 25,000. I think it still is roughly the average salary in the UK is something like 25,000, which, bear in mind, that hasn't changed since before the 2008 financial crash. The 2008 financial crash brought it down, and it's still been there. It's still very much been there. So this really is, I think, going to be the death knell for Boris, because there is no way that he can craft a bill that A, will stop the lobbying scandals, and B, keep his own MPs on side, because they won't, like, Boris knows his party won't vote for this. Like, they know full well they won't vote for it. They know, and here's the thing, optics-wise, when you compare it to what Labour's bill was, which would have stopped, again, MPs engaging in second jobs, that would have been it. That would have ended the scandal completely. That would have ended it. So anything less than that is a fantastic goal for Labour, because it's, again, something else they can attack him on. It's something that the next election they can really tackle the Tories on. They can really put forward, like, oh yeah, there's all this sleaze in Westminster. Well, here is our raft of anti-corruption bills that we want to put into law, we want to put into Parliament. That could really work against the Tories, that. So he's definitely worth, as always, having a look at. Hang on. There we go. But yeah, it's one of those things where you've got to have a look at what's going on in Parliament and what's happening with Johnson's own MPs in this case, because it's not just, the Northern Research Group that's supremely annoyed with Boris. All of Boris's coalition that he had built together based on essentially the power of his popularity alone, this week seems to have really taken a hit. Boris is often known to have this superhuman-like power of Teflon, that no matter what he does, nothing seems to stick to him. Yet, we are seeing this stick, and we are seeing this stick hard. So this I think could be really, really sounding the death knell for Boris. Whether he's taken out in a coup or whether he just decides to leave on his own accord, who knows? Like I say, I've made this prediction before about Boris leaving, but who knows? Yeah, Bozo's Teflon layer has been chipped away. I think that's really been it. I think Boris has just done so much stuff that sooner or later there was just going to be the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And that's what we've seen happen this week. So how does this affect Johnson going forward? I've said it before. Here's the thing. It's not going to be Labour that ousts him. It's not going to be Labour that ousts him at all. It's going to be the Conservative Party that ousts Boris. Say what you want about Keir Starmer. I've said before, I'm a member of the Labour Party. I'm a paid up member. I've got my membership card and everything. The only way the left will ever end up in power is, by getting Labour into power. And it starts with electing left MPs. And if we can do that, we'll get it in. I mean, you've only got to look at the last Labour Party conference of, supporting and wanting PR on the bill. They're really pushing forward for some really progressive policies. Starmer can't head that off forever. Even the sort of, the very, centrist Blairites wing of the party knows that if they lose the next election, they're going to be under pressure. They're going to be under massive pressure. And there's been a lot of people saying that Starmer fully expects to lose the next general election, which unfortunately is not the attitude that they should be taking in to this. Labour needs to put on its boxing gloves and be landing the blows, hammer blow after hammer blow, on Boris, because they've got an absolute garden shed full of sledgehammers that practically the Tories have gift wrapped for Labour to use against them. And they need to go hard, and they need to go on the offensive massively. And I know Starmer can do this because he's done it before. So the big thing, and of course, as always is, all the groups that have come back have said, and clearly said one thing: they do not know what Starmer's Labour stands for. That is their big problem. That is the problem they need to solve. It's got nothing to do with electability. It's got nothing to do with Keir Starmer and his, connecting to the public, because he's far, far more relatable to the public than certainly Boris Johnson is. A guy who has, worked his way up to being, chief of public prosecutions, to being, the Labour Party. He's done the graft. Johnson hasn't. Johnson was just a private school brat who got where he was through money and connections. You tell me what's relatable about the public on that. So it is possible. The left has to take the lessons from what it learned under Corbyn. It has to also be prepared to work with the Blairites. I know that doesn't sound that very appealing to a lot of people, but the Labour Party You cannot win alone on the leftist vote in this country. We've gone over this multiple times. If you look at numerous votes, and I know being a centrist, especially like on the internet and YouTube, is a bit of a meme, that I'm not a centrist, I'm a definite lefty. But in the UK, when you look at what people say they are, overwhelmingly, 25% say they're on the left, 25% say they're on the right, and about 33% of these respondents always say they are centrist. So any fight, any political win needs to be about grabbing. It is about grabbing. And yes, you are right, it is about PR. And I've said Labour does have a PR problem. Well, it's not as bad as the Lib Dems. Not as bad as the Lib Dems PR problem. But it's still, they're doing a lot better than they are, let's to say the least. They need to really take advantage of this. And I've said it before that the Blairite playbook won't work against this government, because the Blairite playbook was made to fight against John Major's government. And this is not John Major's government, it's Boris Johnson's government. So ultimately, it's not going to work. And in a time where the Labour Party really needs to be united, we cannot be fighting against each other, because ultimately we know there's going to be a general election in potentially 2 to 3 years' time if Boris decides to call an early general election, if he can get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. We know there are big problems that the Tories are not going to be able to fix. And we have a lot of the solutions, mainly are to do with, taxing the rich, investing in infrastructure, which again, the Tories had a massive opportunity to do this week and they didn't do it. So that blows the idea that Boris is a guy who can keep his promises, or whatever grandiose promise he can make at any general election should just not be paid attention to and should be just dismissed, because that's what Boris does. He makes grand gestures to the voting public to secure his position and then doesn't follow through on his promises. All Labour has to do, if they win, is to get in, put forward the massive infrastructure bill they've put forward, which will be, again, very good. Fully fund the Northern Powerhouse Rail project, get the eastern leg of the HS2 sorted out, and Bob's your uncle. Labour keeps its promises, Labour builds stuff, Again, we're going to have to see, but one of the big things that Labour does need to do is put forward a really good anti-sleaze, anti-corruption standpoint, and they've got the Tories by the balls, because it's not Labour who have the majority of second jobs. In fact, I think when they looked into it, it was only three Labour MPs who were actually engaged in having second jobs, compared to the vast swarms of Tory MPs who have second jobs in spades. So they really can attack the Tories on this pretty much until the next general election, and it will make a massive impact on them, because again, going back to the Northern Research Group, these guys are pretty much new MPs who got in, and they themselves have seen all this sleaze and corruption and know that they've now been tarred with this brush, making it that much harder for them now to have to fight to get re-elected. And as I've said before, potentially, let's say Boris, quote, wins the next general election, I don't think he's going to have a bigger majority as he did. I think a lot of the red wall seats will go back to Labour hands, and I think Boris might sit there with a lot smaller majority than he has now. But then again, considering the fact that, again, as a lot of people point out, Boris Johnson sure has a very big majority, but doesn't seem to act like a prime minister who has that large majority. How many MPs in the Northern Research Group? I think there's around, officially, unofficially, of course, that's a different question. Officially, I think there's around like 40 something, I think, maybe in the Northern Research Group. I have to see. Oh, Max, good morning to you, Max. Like I say, good morning to everyone. Like I say, I hope you're well. Like I say, we have reached the end of today's Good Morning Walk. Like I say, I hope you've all enjoyed it. Like I say, we've had a fantastic morning. It's been quite a really nice day. We've had a couple of pony encounters. We've talked about that Boris is probably one of the worst couple of weeks Boris Johnson's had in his life, and I think that is going to continue, absolutely going to continue into this week. But as always, folks, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. Like I say, it does help the channel out massively. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you for joining me on this Good Morning Walk. Like I say, we will be out again, of course, weather permitting. Now we are into the, shall we say, the winter months. It might be snowing next week because apparently we are going to have a mini ice age, if you haven't heard the news. So this could all be covered in snow next week. So again, could be quite interesting next week. But I will be, you know, as always, I've got my there we go, got my wellies on. Got my wellies on. Yeah, I might even put my llama hat on depending how cold it is, because even this hat, I've got my hat on today. I'll tell you what, my ears are just a bit cold. But yes, do go and enjoy your weekend. You know, as always, if you can't be safe, be sensible. And of course, coming from, you know, someone who is in the you know, COVID communication business, get your boosters. Get your jabs if you haven't got them. Wear a mask and social distancing, you've been told. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next weekend for another Good Morning Walk.